20. R&B stars you didn't know were gay. R&B gave us the soundtrack for love, heartbreak, and everything in between. But what if some of the most iconic love songs were written by artists who couldn't safely live their own truth? Tonight, we're pulling back a curtain the industry kept closed for decades. You'll hear about legends who stayed silent, stars who came out at the peak of fame, and pioneers who risked everything just to breathe freely. And trust me, some names on this list will genuinely surprise you. If you're ready for stories the radio's never told you, hit like, subscribe, and comment. Which artist shocked you most and why? Queen Latifah. Long before multi-hyphenate became a buzzword, Queen Latifah lived it. Rising out of Newark's scene, Dana Owens arrived with the swagger of a battle-tested MC and the poise of a born leader. Her early records fused hip-hop grit with melodic instinct, and by the time UNITY hit radios, she wasn't merely charting, she was arguing for dignity loudly for women who had rarely heard it in rap. She soon broadened her reach into R&B-leaning ballads, film, and television, collecting an Oscar nomination and becoming one of the first black women to move so fluidly between mic and movie set without losing authority in either world. Mid-career, she also modeled another kind of strength discretion. In a culture that monetizes every dinner date, she refused to auction off her intimacy. How many stars today could withstand decades of pressure and still keep that boundary? Rumors flared, headlines swirled, and she kept steering the conversation back to craft, family, and community work. When she eventually acknowledged her partner choreographer Ebony Nichols and their son during a major awards appearance, it was brief, affectionate, and fully on her terms. No publicity stunt, no confessional tour, just a calm statement of love as fact. For audiences who watched entertainers get punished for being different, Latifah's arc feels quietly revolutionary. She never chased shock value, she practiced patience. By guarding her home life while expanding her artistry, she became a lighthouse for younger performers seeking success without surrendering their souls. That mix of command humor and self-possession is why her legacy keeps growing even now. Da Brat's story feels like a two-act film explosive arrival, then a long, careful walk into her own light. Born Shantae Harris in Chicago, she stormed into the 1990s with a raspy, fast-cut flow that matched So-So Def's party-ready sound. Her debut album, Functified, dropped in 1994, sold over 1 million copies, and made her the first solo woman rapper to earn a platinum plaque, no small feat in a boys' club era. The title track climbed high on rap and R&B charts, and her playful tomboy-style baggy fits, braids, fearless grin became part of her signature. She wasn't trying to be anyone's fantasy. She was building her own lane. But behind that confident armor sat a private fear. For years, she avoided labeling her love life, later admitting she worried honesty might cost her opportunities or invite ridicule. That pressure kept her guarded through much of her prime, even as her voice remained a staple in radio hooks and collaborations. Then came a shift in 2020. After reconnecting with entrepreneur Jessica Judy Harris Dupart-DeBrat, posted a joyful Instagram reveal sparked by a surprise Bentley gift that doubled as her public coming out. The moment wasn't framed as shock, it was framed as happiness. Their engagement followed in 2021, and they married on 2/22/22 in Georgia, leaning into the symbolism of twin flames. In July 2023, they welcomed their son, True Legend, and have since shared their relationship journey through reality TV and an upcoming memoir. DeBrat's arc isn't about reinvention. It's about release, letting the world finally meet the person behind the pioneer. Janelle Monáe. Janelle Monáe is the kind of artist who doesn't just enter a genre, she bends it into a new shape. Raised in Kansas City, she arrived with an Afro-futurist universe already in her head, the android heroine Cindy Mayweather, crisp tuxedo tailoring, and songs that glide between R&B, funk rock, and pop, like they're all the same bloodstream. Her projects, The Arch-Android and Dirty Compu, weren't simply albums. They were cinematic manifestos about liberation, desire, and the beauty of being other. On screen, she brought that same electric precision to films like Moonlight and Hidden Figures, proving she could command a close-up as confidently as a chorus. What makes Monai especially tied to this title is how identity and artistry have always been intertwined in her work, sometimes coded, sometimes shouted. For years, she brushed off questions with playful talk of being an android, yet her lyrics, styling, and videos kept leaning toward queerness and possibility beyond traditional roles. Did you catch those signals before she ever put a label on them? In 2018, she publicly identified as pansexual, explaining that her attraction isn't limited by gender, and that the word helped her describe what she'd felt for a long time. She later spoke about being non-binary and using she/they pronouns, widening the conversation from who she loves to how she understands herself. Instead of treating any of this like a confession, Monai frames it as evolution, an artist growing in daylight. Her recent music, especially The Age of Pleasure, celebrates Black queer sensuality with warmth, confidence, and joy rather than secrecy or pain. Monai's legacy in R&B isn't only about visibility. It's about imagination. She shows that queer life in this music can be glamorous, cerebral, tender, triumphant, and absolutely without limits. Kalani Ashley Parrish rose out of Oakland with a sound that feels like a late-night phone call. You're not ready to hang up, raw, melodic, and fearless. She first caught national attention as a teenager on America's Got Talent with the group Pop Life. But after leaving the band, she rebuilt her career from the ground up. That restart sharpened her pen. Mixtapes like Cloud 19, 2014, and You Should Be Here, 2015, mixed modern R&B textures with hip-hop bite and diary-level storytelling. You Should Be Here earned a Grammy nomination for Best Urban Contemporary Album, signaling she wasn't just a viral talent, but a lasting voice. From there, projects such as Sweet Sexy Savage and It Was Good Until It Wasn't expanded her reach, pairing smoky vocals with themes of healing desire and self-respect. Because her work is rooted in lived experience, her identity journey unfolded alongside her music. For years, she described herself as queer, emphasizing attraction that didn't fit a single gender box. Still, some listeners tried to solve her life through tabloid math, pointing to public relationships with men like NBA star Kyrie Irving and rapper YG, as if love history were a rule book. In April 2021, Kalani ended the noise with a simple TikTok declaration. She said she is a lesbian, and that the label finally matched her truth. Kalani matters to this title because she embodies a generational shift, an artist proving that self-definition can be gradual, public imperfect, and still joyful. Her catalog keeps widening what R&B love songs can hold, showing that honesty isn't a detour from art. It's the fuel. Frank Ocean, born Christopher Edwin Breaux in Long Beach and raised in New Orleans, emerged as a rare kind of modern heartthrob, quiet on the surface, devastatingly direct in song. Before the solo spotlight, he wrote for pop heavyweights and moved with the Odd Future Collective. But his own work felt like a different climate, humid, reflective, stitched with jazz chords and hip-hop minimalism. When Nostalgia Ultra arrived in 2011, listeners heard a writer who could turn small moments into cinema. Then came Channel Orange in July 2012, an album that opened at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with about 131,000 first-week sales and later earned the Grammy for Best Urban Contemporary Album. It didn't just succeed. It reset the bar for what R&B could sound like in the streaming age. Days before that release, Ocean posted a Tumblr letter describing his first profound love as a young man. The tone wasn't sensational or defensive. It read like a page torn from a notebook. Did you expect an R&B leading man to speak that plainly in 2012? In a space where machismo often policed artists' personal lives, his choice carried weight far beyond one confession. It gave context to the emotional angles already living in his lyrics, longing without assigned roles, devotion without borrowed scripts. Afterward, Ocean kept moving in his own orbit. Blonde, 2016 debuted at number 1, bending structure into mood and memory, while his sparse public appearances only sharpened the mystique. Yet the impact of that earlier letter stayed loud. He made room for vulnerability in a lane that once demanded armor. Frank Ocean didn't chase a moment, he changed the weather. Young M.A. Young M.A., born Katora Marrero in Brooklyn, arrived in hip-hop with the kind of clarity most artists spend a lifetime chasing. Her 2016 breakout, Oh Woo, wasn't just a hit. It was a statement of presence built on a booming cadence, razor-sharp timing, and a voice that sounded like the streets that raised her. The track went multi-platinum, pushed her into mainstream radio, and made her one of the few new MCs who could dominate a club without polishing away her edges. She followed with projects like Herstory and Off the Yak, proving Oh Woo wasn't a fluke, but an opening chapter. What sets Young M.A. apart in a list like this is that there was never a dramatic reveal. She didn't come out because she never went in. From her earliest records and interviews, she spoke openly about dating women, presenting her masculinity as natural, not performative. In an industry that often pressures female rappers to soften, sexualize, or sanitize themselves, Young M. doubled down on authenticity, oversized, fits minimalist glare, and bars that carried both humor and hunger. She also drew firm lines around representation. When offered roles that felt like stereotypes, she publicly said no choosing respect over exposure. That decision mattered. She wasn't aiming to be anyone's token queer rapper. She was aiming to be a great rapper, period. Young M.A.'s legacy is still unfolding, but her impact is already clear. She normalized a kind of fearless self-definition in rap and R&B adjacent spaces, showing younger artists that honesty can be a foundation, not a risk. Saucy Santana. Saucy Santana's rise is a reminder that stardom doesn't always start in a recording booth. Before the fame, he was the friend in the room who made everyone look better, literally. Coming out of Miami, he first built a name as a professional makeup artist, working closely with the city girls and moving through spaces where style, humor, and quick wit mattered as much as any beat. That backstage world taught him how celebrity operates, but it also gave him something rarer, a front-row view of how image can be weaponized or set free. When he stepped into music around 2019, he didn't soften a single edge. His early tracks carried the bounce of Southern club culture and the swagger of someone who'd already survived being underestimated. Songs like Walk and Material Girl exploded on TikTok because they felt like pure personality, loud, flirtatious, and completely uninterested in playing safe. He rapped about men the way countless straight artists rap about women, flipping the script without apology. How often do you see a rapper turn confidence into a celebration instead of a shield? What many listeners miss is the cultural lineage behind his shine. Santana's aesthetic cadence and stage energy echo ballroom and drag traditions that queer Black communities have used for decades as arenas of survival and joy. By bringing those codes into the mainstream, he's not just chasing charts, he's carrying a whole history with him. Instead of treating his sexuality as a headline, he treats it as everyday truth, part of the joke, the flex, the flirt, the life. In doing that, Saucy Santana has helped widen what rap and R&B adjacent stardom can look like: unapologetic, theatrical, and still rooted in real community. Lil Nas X. Lil Nas X, born Montero Lamar Hill in Georgia and raised in Atlanta, didn't just break into pop R&B crossover, he kicked the door off its hinges. In late 2018, he released Old Town Road, a playful country trap hybrid that the industry first didn't know what to do with, then couldn't stop playing. The Billy Ray Cyrus remix turned it into a phenomenon, and in 2019, the song held the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 for 19 straight weeks, the longest run in chart history at the time. Overnight, he went from meme-savvy outsider to a global headline. At the exact peak of that whirlwind, he made a move that rewired the conversation around masculinity in Black music. On the last day of Pride Month, June 30th, 2019, he tweeted a hint to look closely at his EP7 and effectively came out as gay while still owning the biggest record in America. Instead of retreating, he leaned forward, using humor, fashion, and spectacle to make visibility impossible to ignore. His artistry after that moment doubled down on freedom. Montero. Call Me By Your Name, 2021, and its unapologetically queer visuals brought both acclaim and backlash, which he answered with wit rather than apology. That same year, he partnered with MSCHF on the infamous Satan Shoes 666 custom Air Max 97 pairs, priced at $1.08, featuring a tiny drop of human blood in the sole. They sold out in under a minute and sparked a lawsuit that ended in a settlement and recall. Lil Nas X's lasting impact isn't just records and controversy, it's the fact that he made being joyful, flamboyant, and openly gay compatible with mainstream stardom, widening the runway for everyone behind him. Big Freedia, born Freddie Ross Jr. in New Orleans, is the living heartbeat of bounce and explosive call and response party sound that grew out of the city's neighborhoods long before the mainstream knew what to call it. Freedia started performing in the late 1990s, building a reputation through sweaty club sets, parade routes, and community shows where the goal wasn't polish, it was release. Her voice, commanding, playful, instantly recognizable, became a local landmark. By the 2010s, she was carrying that local fire to national stages, touring non-stop, and turning bounce from a regional treasure into an international language of joy. What makes Freedia essential to this title is that she never performed a reveal about who she is. She has long been open as a queer artist and gender non-conforming figure, moving through the world with the same confidence she brings to the mic. The wider culture caught up to her, not the other way around. Have you ever witnessed someone lead a movement simply by refusing to shrink? That steadfastness turned her into an icon far beyond music, a symbol of Black Southern queer resilience that feels both celebratory and protective. Her influence is stamped on pop history. She's featured on Drake's Nice for What 2018 and Beyoncé's Break My Soul 2022, two massive hits that introduced bounce chants to millions of listeners who may never have stepped inside a New Orleans club. She also starred in her own reality series, showing the daily grind behind the glitter. Even when legal troubles briefly slowed her in the mid-2010s, she kept working, touring, and rebuilding, treating setbacks like a beat drop, something to move through, not bow to. Big Freedia's story is loud, communal, and deeply New Orleans survival turned into celebration. Doechii, born Jayla Jimia Hickman in Tampa, Florida, is a fresh wave artist who treats rap and R&B like two colors on the same brush. She first stirred attention online in 2021 with quick theatrical clips that showed equal parts vocal control and comic timing. That momentum carried her to a 2022 deal with Top Dog Entertainment and Capitol, placing her in the same creative home that helped launch major West Coast voices. Her 2023 single, What It Is Block Boy, featuring Kodak Black, became her pop culture breakthrough, earning her first entry on the Billboard Hot 100 and later going platinum. Instead of chasing one lane, she zigzags boom-bap, one-minute velvety hooks the next, so listeners never get a predictable verse. By 2024, her mixtape Alligator Bites Never Heal pushed her into the top-tier, landing in the Billboard 200 Top 10 and winning Best Rap Album at the 2025 Grammys, making her only the third woman ever to take that prize. The project's bite comes from contrast, sharp humor beside real vulnerability. Florida swagger beside neo-soul softness. Just as notable is how casually she speaks about being bisexual. There wasn't a grand announcement era. She simply answers questions the way straight artists always have, with no hint of apology. That normalcy is the point. Doechii's climb shows a new blueprint: skill, first personality always, and identity as a natural part of the frame, not the headline. For older audiences, she's proof the culture has finally expanded enough to let talent arrive as its whole self. Kai Tronada, born Louis Kevin Celestin in Port-au-Prince and raised in Montreal, is one of those behind-the-boards architects who quietly changes what R&B feels like from the inside. He started young, posting remixes online and DJing parties, stitching together house hip-hop drums and silky soul samples, until his sound became instantly recognizable, warm swinging, and made for late-night headlights. By the mid-2010s, his production work for artists like Aluna George Anderson, Pach Pac Her, and others had turned him into a tastemaker's favorite, even for listeners who didn't yet know his face. His solo albums pushed that influence into full view. 99.9%. 2016 introduced a dance floor language that still breathed like R&B grooves that flirted instead of punched. Bubba 2019 refined the palette, leaning into funk bass lines, airy synths, and percussive bounce that felt both nostalgic and futuristic. The project's reception was huge, and by 2021 he won Grammys including Best Dance Electronic Album, a landmark moment for a black queer producer in a category historically dominated by white acts. Away from the studio, his personal journey mattered just as much. Kaytranada came out publicly as gay in 2016, later describing the emotional weight of hiding within a strict religious family and the relief of finally living honestly. Do you realize how rare that kind of openness once was for men in his corner of the industry? Instead of shrinking his career, that truth seemed to unlock it. His music afterward carried more lightness, more play, more ease. Kaytranada's legacy sits in the blend club energy, with soul tenderness, technical mastery, with human vulnerability, and a quiet insistence that you don't need to trade authenticity for excellence. Mickey Blanco. Mickey Blanco is a boundary breaker whose career sits at the crossroads of rap performance art poetry and punk defiance. Emerging from Los Angeles' underground in the early 2010s, Blanco didn't chase a seat at hip-hop's table, she built a new room. Early projects like Cosmic Angel, The Illuminati Prince, SS, and Gay Dog Food mixed elastic flows with industrial textures, fearless satire, and a stage presence that felt closer to theater than a typical set. She toured relentlessly, often in spaces that weren't sure what to do with a black, queer, gender non-conforming artist who could out-rap most of the lineup while also dismantling the rules of presentation. Blanco's visibility matters not because it was trendy, but because it was risky. She moved through scenes where the default expectation was either invisibility or caricature and refused both. Her work has always argued that identity is not a costume for approval. It's a lived reality that can be raw, funny, erotic, angry, spiritual, and messy all at once. That's the core of Mickey's impact. In 2015, Blanco shared that she had been living with HIV since 2011. Instead of letting stigma define her, she used the disclosure to confront silence head-on, especially in communities where shame still blocks care. She has spoken about the fear that honesty might end her path, and about the relief of no longer carrying the burden alone. Today, Mickey Blanco stands as a crucial figure for the next generation of queer black musicians, proof that artistry can be experimental without losing soul, and that truth, however complex, can survive the spotlight. Jean Grey, born Sidi Ibrahim, grew up between South Africa and New York City, and that in-between feeling runs through everything she makes. She surfaced in the late 90s as what then reintroduced herself as Jean Grey, and became one of underground hip-hop's sharpest writers. Her albums and mixtapes, packed with naughty internal rhymes, oddball humor, and abrupt left turns into tenderness, earned her the reputation of your favorite rapper's favorite rapper. She doesn't just rap on a beat. She builds little worlds where every bar has a job. Unlike many peers, she never chased pop radio polish. She built a career on craft, intricate storytelling characters that feel lived in and punchlines that land like tiny explosives. Her voice can flip from comedic to cutting without warning, and she's equally comfortable sparring with other MCs or tearing down her own doubts in public. Have you ever heard a song that makes you grin and then suddenly go quiet? That's her sweet spot. Laughter as a door to something heavier hiding behind it. Grey has spoken openly about being queer, but she's never treated that as a gimmick or a headline. It's simply part of who she is, sitting alongside themes of womanhood, displacement, industry fatigue, and stubborn survival. She's married to rapper-producer Quell Chris, and their collaborations feel like two clever minds finishing each other's sentences, sometimes lovingly, sometimes like a debate at the kitchen table. John Gray's career is proof that originality doesn't need permission, and that a rapper can stay uncompromising, stay independent, and still earn lasting respect. Michelle Ndegeocello has always sounded like she's playing three conversations at once and somehow making them harmonize. Born in Berlin to an army family and raised around Washington, D.C., she stepped into the early 90s with a bass in her hands and a mind that refused genre borders. Her 1993 debut, Plantation Lullabies, landed like a thunderclap, funky, political, sensual, and impossible to file neatly under R&B, rock, or jazz. She followed it with daring records such as Peace Beyond Passion and Bitter, each one looping soul grooves through sharp social commentary and intimate confession. That mix made her a musician's musician, beloved by peers, respected by critics, and quietly influential on a whole wave of neo-soul and alternative R&B that came after. She's also been open about her bisexuality since the start of her career, at a time when that kind of honesty could shrink radio play or scare off labels. Instead of hiding, Michelle folded truth into the work, letting her songs hold desire in more than one direction without turning it into a spectacle. Her posture was never, "Look at me." It was, "This is me, take it or leave it." Beyond her own catalog, she's a sought-after collaborator and bandleader known for a bass style that's rubbery and melodic, and for vocals that float between a whisper and a challenge. Michelle's legacy is not just daring albums. It's the permission she quietly gave others to be complex, layered, and unboxed. Isaiah Rashad, born Isaiah Rashad Joel McLean in Chattanooga, Tennessee, came into the spotlight as the soft-spoken poet of Top Dog Entertainment. While the label was known for hard edges and big statements, Rashad brought a humid southern introspection songs that felt like porch talks at midnight. His 2014 project, Sylvia Demo, introduced a writer who could turn anxiety, fatherhood, and small-town pressure into hypnotic grooves. 2 years later, the Sun's tirade deepened that portrait-pairing, jazz-tinged production with verses about addiction, depression, and the daily grind of staying alive. By the time The House is Burning arrived in 2021, he'd earned a loyal audience for being vulnerable without melodrama. Then his private world was dragged into daylight. In February 2022, explicit videos of Rashad with men were leaked online, an ugly violation that outed him without consent. The internet fed on it for weeks, and he went silent, visibly shaken. Have you ever watched someone lose control of their own story and felt that gut-level unfairness when he resurfaced at Coachella in April 2022? He thanked fans for messages that kept him alive. A month later, in a Joe Budden interview, Rashad said he identifies as sexually fluid, explaining he was still learning himself and refusing to let a leak define him. What followed wasn't a publicity pivot, it was a reclaiming. He returned to touring, kept writing, and spoke about healing in the same plain language that made his music resonate. Rashad's place on this list is complicated, but important, not because he sought a headline, but because he chose honesty after being harmed, showing that dignity can be rebuilt even when the world tries to take it away. Young Miami, born Caresha Brownlee in Miami, Florida, built her name the hard way through heat hustle and a voice that refuses to apologize. As one half of City Girls, she helped turn Southern club rap into a mainstream force with hooks and rhythms that often lean into R&B's bounce and bravado. Tracks like Act Up and Twerk didn't just move parties, they flipped the script, letting women speak about desire, money, and power in their own language. Caresha's style is playful but sharp, like a grin with a blade behind it, and that mix made City Girls a defining act of their era. What's just as important is how she handles her life off stage. Instead of letting fame trap her in one image, she expanded. In 2022, she launched her talk platform Caresha Please, stepping into a new lane as a host who can be flirty, funny, and surprisingly direct. She asks what people really want to know, and she doesn't shrink in rooms full of bigger names. Qureisha has also spoken openly about being bisexual without turning it into a spectacle. She's been clear that attraction to women is part of her truth even while her public relationships with men have stayed in the headlines. That matter-of-fact honesty signals a cultural shift. What once had to be hidden can now be said plainly. Young Miami's story fits this title because she represents a generation that won't choose between authenticity and ambition. She's chasing both and making space for others to do the same. Azealia Banks. Azealia Banks is one of hip-hop's most gifted and most polarizing figures, a Harlem native who arrived like a lightning strike. When 212 blew up in 2011, it didn't sound like anything else on radio razor-fast cadence house-leaning beat, and a snarl that felt both playful and dangerous. She followed with the 1991 EP reminding everyone she wasn't a one-song fluke. Her delivery is elastic, able to swing between dance floor swagger and needle-sharp insult in a single breath, and her ear for electronic textures helped foreshadow the rap meets club wave that would dominate years later. Even critics who can't stand her headlines often admit the talent is undeniable. From early in her career, Banks has described herself as bisexual. She never framed it as confession or marketing. She tossed it into conversation the way she tosses everything else, direct, unfiltered, sometimes confrontational. Do you think the industry would have tolerated that kind of blunt openness from a black woman 20 years earlier? Her connection to queer nightlife, especially ballroom-adjacent club culture, shows up in her sound choices and performance energy, placing her in a lineage where dance music and black queer spaces constantly feed each other. At the same time, her career is a study in contradiction. Public feuds, inflammatory posts, and burned bridges have repeatedly interrupted momentum that her music alone could have carried much further. She remains a what-if case, an artist with the skill to be a generational superstar, yet often derailed by her own volatility. Still, her influence lingers in the way rappers today glide over club beats with unapologetic attitude. Azealia Banks is proof that brilliance and chaos sometimes live in the same body, and the culture keeps arguing about which side will win. Chika born Jane. Chika Oronica in Montgomery, Alabama came into rap with the kind of lyrical fire that makes people stop scrolling. She first gained traction through freestyle videos that blended sharp pen work with a disarming conversational tone, like she was talking to you, not performing at you. That online wave led to national attention, and her 2020 EP Industry Games, a project that showcased her ability to switch from biting social critique to tender self-examination without losing rhythm. She was nominated for Best New Artist at the Grammys that same year, signaling that her talent wasn't just viral, it was durable. What places Chika in this conversation is her openness. She has identified as queer from early on, speaking about it without the dramatic reveal template older generations were forced into. Her honesty also stretches beyond sexuality, into body image, mental health, and the pressure of being visible as a black woman in a ruthless public arena. Chika has dealt with relentless online cruelty attacks aimed at her weight, her identity, and her confidence. But instead of retreating, she often answers back with clarity and humor, turning pain into fuel. Musically, she's rooted in classic Southern storytelling, but updated for today, tight cadences, warm melodic pockets, and hooks that feel handmade, not factory cut. She's part of a newer wave, proving that vulnerability can sit right next to swagger, and that being an artist doesn't require hiding the parts of yourself people label too much. Chika's rise is still unfolding, yet her impact is already clear. She's making space for realness to live in the spotlight. I love Makonnen. Born Makonnen. Kamali Sharon is one of those artists who entered R&B leaning hip-hop sideways, half melody, half mischief, and made the mainstream look twice. He came up in Atlanta's scene as a quirky genre-blurring voice who could sing in a loose conversational croon and then pivot into sing-song rap without warning. In 2014, he released Tuesday, a hazy, off-kilter club record that felt like a private joke between friends. When Drake jumped on the remix that summer, The song surged nationwide, peaking at number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100 and turning McConnell into an overnight name. The success led to a short-lived deal with Drake's OVO sound, and for a moment he looked positioned to be the next left-field star to redefine what R&B-tinted rap could sound like. Then the spotlight cooled. Industry politics, label tension, and the heavy expectations that follow a breakout hit pushed him to the margins again. For listeners, he became that Tuesday guy, even though his deeper catalog kept experimenting with mood, melody, and vulnerability. Have you ever watched a one-hit narrative swallow a real artist's bigger story? That frustration quietly sat behind his public face for years. On January 20th, 2017, McConnell reclaimed his own narrative by tweeting a simple statement: "I'm gay." There was no rollout, no PR spin, just plain truth. He later described how coming out shifted friendships and industry energy, exposing how fragile acceptance could be inside hip-hop. Still, he kept creating, still kept showing up, refusing to let either fame or backlash define him. McConnell's place on this list matters because his honesty came in the middle of uncertainty, not on top of a victory lap. He proved that even when the charts move on, your truth doesn't have to. Taylor Bennett. Chicago-born and raised in the same creative soil as his older brother Chance the Rapper, has worked hard to be known as more than the sibling. He began releasing music as a teenager, shaping a sunny, fast-paced style that mixes nimble verses with R&B-tinged melodies. Projects such as Broad Shoulders 2015 and Restoration of an American Idol 2017 highlighted a writer drawn to vivid themes, gratitude, family bonds, and hometown spirit rather than shock value. He's toured, collaborated, and steadily built a catalog that feels like a conversation with listeners instead of a performance at them. A major turning point arrived just as adulthood did. On January 18, 2017, the eve of his 21st birthday, Bennett tweeted that he is bisexual. The post was calm and straightforward, and he said he wanted to support others who struggle with the same questions. His choice landed as personal honesty, not a publicity stunt. Chance immediately backed him with a loving message, and fans followed suit. Afterward, Bennett leaned into visibility through music and community work. Songs like Be Yourself champion self-acceptance, while his interviews stress empathy, mental health, and refusing to let stereotypes dictate manhood. He's continued releasing records on his own terms, including Be Yourself, 2018, and Coming of Age, 2022, and he often frames his art as a hand extended to younger listeners. Taylor Bennett's journey shows that in R&B-adjacent hip-hop, sincerity can be a form of strength. From Queen Latifah's quiet pride to Frank Ocean's game-changing letter, these 20 artists show how Black R&B kept evolving even when the world wasn't ready. Some came out loudly, others never needed to, and a few lived under whispers we still can't verify. Together, they expanded what love songs can mean and who gets to sing them. So, who owns the narrative now? But here's the question for Legends of Black Excellence viewers. Should we treat visibility itself as the victory, even when a story arrives through leaks or rumors, or does real progress require consent and confirmed truth? First,